For Sunday, October 23rd, you've found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today is still a major fight over the perhaps state takeover of some local school districts. In parts of metro Atlanta, yes, indeed, new cities are on the ballot once again. And in Georgia, the race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump tightens up. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us. We are 16 days out from the November 8th presidential election and the attendant elections here in the state of Georgia. We'll try to get to all those contentious issues for you this morning on the Georgia gang. And we begin with not the presidency, once again, but with constitutional amendments on the ballot. I've never in all my career said we would begin a broadcast with constitutional amendments over elections between people.
Yep.
It's fascinating, but last week we spent a good bit of time on the governor's plan on the ballot to take over failing schools. And I thought this morning we might try to focus on another constitutional amendment that my friend Phil has kept in the limelight now for months, and which I originally resisted, but I've said to Phil, you were right, it is an issue, and that's the question of how judges are disciplined. The Judicial Qualifications Commission would be redone by this constitutional amendment on the ballot, giving power, Phil, to the legislature more than to the state bar.
That's right, and I think it's very important because what is the JQC, this Judicial Qualifications Commission? It is the only watchdog agency that can investigate judges who are abusing their public office. And this was running very well up until 2 years ago, and by all accounts, it's now a completely dysfunctional agency. There's no executive director to speak of, there's no investigator, and so what the legislature did is to say, look, there needs to be some accountability, there needs to be oversight, and there needs to be some appointees by the legislative branch. Right now, there is no accountability. You are right, the state bar has, and I maintain, too much influence, because what was happening the last 2 years, we've talked about it, Lester Tate, a former state bar president, and his allies were starting to do their own agenda and playing favorites. That came out during the legislative hearings. So now voters, I'm going to vote yes, because is it a perfect amendment? No, but I think there needs to be some accountability, and now there's none.
Jeff, does it inject partisanship into the selection of judges?
I smell partisan politics all over this thing.
See, I think the JQC, as it was constituted, was the old last stand of the Democrats. Lester Tate is even talking about running for Attorney General as a Democrat. So he's a partisan guy. Roy Barnes has always had a big role in that thing. And so it is either pure partisanship or restoring balance, perhaps.
Well, you know, I think that it's just pure partisanship, and you know, you can say that it's you know, one of the last bastions of Democrats, but you know, so was the state legislature. They were all Democrats. All they did was just change their views. They changed their clothes, and the same is true of a lot of lawyers and judges in the state of Georgia too. Right? They just went from Democrat to Republican, holding exactly the same views. We witnessed all of that. We saw it happen, and I think that this is just a partisan power grab on the part of the legislature, talking about in the last 2 years that it hadn't worked all that well. Well, neither has the Georgia General Assembly, but nobody's talking about taking away their power.
But you know, Alexis, the fact is that the state bar will still submit the names of judicial candidates, but there'll be a filter in the legislature, as I understand it.
Well, let's not confuse the JQC with the JNC, which is the nominating committee. Let's not confuse the viewers.
Thank you.
And beyond that, the way it's structured now, 3 of the positions are appointed by the state bar, 2 by the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, which is now a majority appointed by the Republican governor, and 2 from the governor. So there is a balance, if you will, already in place, and it's done by the executive branch. There is accountability. They just need to make it function better.
Now, there are 2 other constitutional amendments. There are 4 all told on the ballot.
Yes.
2 others are what you might call routine housekeeping matters. One will, it's sort of interesting, it will tax strippers and adult entertainment establishments. And
could that be a poll tax?
Would you wait 6 months for that one? Good shot. Well, anyway, the proceeds from the poll tax will go to a fund to prevent sex trafficking and rescue young girls and some boys in sex trafficking operations.
Yes.
I guess they'll have to probably have a pretty long line for inspectors positions when this goes into
Y'all are
effect.
terrible this morning.
And then the other one is about fireworks. We legalized fireworks, and we said, wait a minute, we got to take care of the people who blow off their fingers, right?
Right.
So there's going to be a fund set aside for trauma and for fireworks victims. That seems fine to me. My only reservation about all that is these state funds, dedicated funds, never seem to actually be filled.
Well, this is
There's
why
a
it's a
history of that.
constitutional amendment that actually dedicates it, and I think we all
designates the
agree
funds, yeah.
trauma care, especially in the rural areas,
Right.
needs to be funded better.
So here's my note to the viewers. There are 4 amendments. Vote no on the odds and yes on the evens.
No on the odds and yes on the evens.
Yes.
Okay.
So
well,
the odds are Amendment 1 is the Opportunity School District. Vote no. Amendment 2 is a sex trafficking tax. Vote yes. Amendment 3 is a Judicial Qualifications Commission. Vote no. Amendment 4 is the firecracker tax. Vote yes.
you've been writing too many editorials in your career. That was like a
Just like an
newspaper
endorsement
editorial.
Yeah, yeah, just vote yes, you know. If,
Well, let's just real quickly stay on the Opportunity School District Amendment. We've discussed it in great depth, but I think, in my humble view, it seemed to swing this week away from Governor Deal's position. The AJC has a poll that shows it trailing by a big margin. Therefore, I'm suspect, because I thought it was much closer.
I'm always suspect of the AJC polls. I don't know. There's been an ad war on both sides. I think it's going to be very close.
But you've got the PTA coming out against it, which is just the most absurd thing in the world, because the absence of parents is the reason schools are failing. But anyway, the PTA is against it. And Andy Young.
I think the teachers are against it, and we've seen their political clout in the past. You were going to say Andy Young.
Yeah, Andy
also
Young has
is
come out
also-
against it,
is also
and that's an
involved.
important voice.
That's a very important, very influential voice, I think, across the state, but most certainly in minority communities. You know, part of the problem with the OSD amendment is that it doesn't, and I think that the campaign has failed to really lay out in detail how they're going to go about improving schools and opportunities for school children. I mean, we hear, you know, these really vague terms about charter schools and all that kind of stuff. But specifically, how are you going to
What are you
take?
going to do different?
What are you going to do
Well,
different
let me
that's
answer
going to
that.
turn around the educational fortunes of these
Well,
school children?
those are good questions, and let me just give you some specifics. What's wrong with if a school has been failing, and this is what the legislation says, for 3 years in a row, and some of these schools have been failing for 10 years or more, what's wrong with then saying temporarily, let's
5
look
years
at
minimum.
let's look at making this
It is
a charter
temporary.
school.
5 years
Let me
is-
finish my point. Let's make this a charter school, which is very popular. Let's make this a new principal that can maybe turn, or let's close
shut
the
it
school.
down.
Let's close
And what
the
are you gonna
school.
It's all about
Those are
jobs. It's
specifics.
worthless teachers
I don't
trying
think
to
that,
protect their
that's not
jobs.
it's
That's all it
not
is.
that's not enough detail for me. To just say we're going to do a charter school focused
It's a
on what?
turnaround plan.
A charter school focused on what?
It's
You
a
know,
turnaround plan.
And what, in grade school, middle school, high school? Because we know in middle school, high school, there's very little.
Too late.
It's too late.
All right, last thought from me on this. 40 local school boards have come out in opposition to the governor's plan and this constitutional amendment. I'd like to call the superintendents of all 40 of those school districts to sit right in one of these chairs and say, okay, pal, you got failing schools. You've had failing schools for, use your number, Jeff, 150 years. What are you going to do about it? What
Well,
are you
there is
going to
no-
do
there
about
is
it?
no
The thing
plan.
They have no answer.
Well, they don't have they do have an answer, and they have been doing things. The problem is the lag in achievement has been so great that even the schools that are showing improvement are still listed as failing schools.
Well,
so they have to continue to try to improve.
A lot of these schools are not showing improvement. Let's be clear about that. That's the sad story. You've got third graders. I've talked to teachers, and I'm sure you have in the Atlanta public school system.
gotta
You've
get
got
out.
third graders that don't know the alphabet or know English. Now that needs to be fixed, and this is a way to do it.
No,
And we're gonna catch 'em early, to your
it's
point.
taxation without
That's
representation.
wrong.
To
That's
do
wrong.
nothing is just not an option. All right, when we come back, we'll take a look at some local news. Eventually, we're going to get to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, but first, more news. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
We haven't had the elections yet, but in some senses, it's beginning to feel as if we're already getting ready for the next ones, that we have lame ducks. like Governor Deal and like Mayor Kasim Reed. But Phil, Governor Deal is engineering a transition to a lot of new people in state positions of authority.
Well, we talked about a lot of appointments last week, and there were some new ones since we broadcast last week. And this is a very important department, the Department of Corrections. And we've talked on this show that has been scandal-ridden. There's been deaths of guards and inmates in recent years that appalling. They can't control cell phones. Well, the DOC Commissioner, Homer Bryson, is moving out of that slot. And frankly, I'm glad he is.
It's a no-win job.
Well, and it could be a winner, but he's going over the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security sector. Now that, as we know, is very important, especially with Hurricane Matthew and with the cleanup.
And when it snows.
And when it snows,
Jim
that's
Butterworth
very,
is stepping
very,
aside, yeah.
That's right. And Greg Dozier is going to take over the Department of Corrections. So again, we wish him well to get control.
All right, you had the easy one, Alexis. I'm giving you the hard one.
Uh-oh.
Explain to me what the people of South Fulton County are going to do on Tuesday, November 8th.
Well,
are they going to vote for a city of South Fulton, or are they not?
That remains to be settled. There is a federal court hearing set for October 27th that will determine that very thing, whether it will be on the ballot or not, and who can vote. Because the pro annexation folks annexed part of South Fulton into the city of Atlanta. The anti and the pro South Fulton City folks contested that, and a Fulton County Superior Court judge threw it out and put the folks out of the city back into the county. And now the county folks are saying, wait a minute, we want to be in the city, we don't want to be in the county, we don't want a new city. And so they have filed this suit in federal court saying it's a constitutional issue.
It's coming right down to the wire. I mean, we're really close to this November 8 election, and a tremendous amount of uncertainty for a group of citizens who really don't know whether they're going to be able to vote or not. Or on what.
Or if they vote, does it count?
Right.
Right.
All of that.
That's part of the issue
right.
that I've looked at. Look, I'm your all-seeing, all-knowing host. I've made a good faith effort to follow this South Fulton thing because I like new cities, and I can't follow it. Now, Jeff, I'll turn to you. Not getting a lot of ink, but the folks in Central South DeKalb are going to vote on a new city of Stonecrest.
That's correct. That's correct. It would be one of the largest cities in Georgia, 50,000 residents.
But only 3 services.
But only 3 services initially, right. And so I think that there's a tremendous amount of support out there at this point for it. Very little organized opposition in South DeKalb to this effort, a tremendous amount of support for it, and the fact that you got so many people going to the polls in the presidential contest, I think gives it a tremendous boost that it wouldn't have had otherwise.
Well, Stonecrest is like Dunwoody in this sense. It has a mall, it has an economic heart. Dunwoody has, Perimeter Center as its basically its tax base.
Yeah, there is a tax base for this
So
proposed
Stonecrest has a tax base.
Yeah.
Unlike, say, a neighboring city like Lithonia that really doesn't have much of one. So I wouldn't hesitate to vote for a city of Stonecrest in that way.
And it's also one of the areas of the county that is probably the most sparsely populated. And so, to the extent that we're going to have any more suburban population growth or building spurts, that's sort of a natural target.
Now, the news out of Gwinnett County this week wasn't necessarily good. Now, I wasn't totally tuned into what was happening in Gwinnett, but when the Hillary Clinton campaign bus dumps its
Sewage.
stuff.
No, it's raw sewage.
Raw sewage
Let's
into
tell
a,
the viewers
into
what
a,
happened.
Well, I was trying to clean up my own language.
Yeah.
When, first of all, the bus is a traveling piece of that, and then they decided to dump it into a manhole cover, right?
Yeah,
or
they
a
thought they
storm
were going
drain.
to get away with it until somebody started filming them. And, this is a metaphor, I think, for what Hillary Clinton's going to do for
Thank you.
America. But they finally apologized after they were caught.
In Cobb County, Dwight Brown, who was embattled, subject of a trial over how he seemed to be looting the Georgia EMC.
It was the Cobb EMC. He's the former CEO. This is, and you remember this, we've talked about this for 10 years. Can you believe that? It's this long-running court case. It was first started by DA Pat Head in Cobb County. He's now gone. And Roy Barnes was the attorney for Dwight Brown. He did a good job, and Roy Barnes said it was a witch hunt, and it was the worst case of over-prosecution he's ever seen.
Boy, if you look at the mail the Georgia gang got during that, you'd think that Dwight Brown was under-prosecuted. But
Right,
that was
Exactly
a
right.
very
and
contentious
there were a lot
case.
of folks out there in Cobb County who felt exactly
So,
that way.
for the viewers, the last charge has been dropped by a Cobb Superior Court judge.
All right, that clears the decks for us to turn to the segment on politics, and we're going to do that. We've already touched on it. I guess Phil said probably the best thing he's said in years, that Hillary Clinton campaign bus was a metaphor. That was perfect, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
More
boo,
when we
boo
return.
hiss again.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And whoops, you caught me checking my cell phone. We're waiting to hear from Matt Towery of Opinion Savvy Polling and Fox 5 with some late numbers on the presidential race in Georgia and perhaps the Senate race with Johnny Isakson, but he hasn't got the everything buttoned up on that just yet. So you check your phone as we talk, and we'll figure it out, and I'll check mine. But let's turn to the Senate race in Georgia, such as it is. The only issue to me is whether Johnny Isakson will avoid a runoff. Will he get the 50+1? The AJC has a poll showing him way ahead, but under 50%.
Yes.
But 47% was it in the AJC poll? And I don't know, Barksdale, the Democrat, is not much of a candidate. As we were taping this broadcast on Friday, the three Senate candidates, Johnny Isakson, Jim Barksdale, and Alan Buckley, the Libertarian, were taping their own debate for Georgia Public Broadcasting. That airs tonight, Alexis, you said at 6 p.m.?
Yes.
And that's
And
the Press Club debate.
Atlanta
We can-
Press Club sponsored, yeah.
You can get a look at the three candidates. I'm anxious to see if Barksdale will wear his cap for the debate. You think?
I don't know. That was just.
It's in all the commercials, he
gimmick.
wears the cap.
Yep.
It's interesting, there are so few competitive legislative races this year, almost none. One of them, for example, is in Buckhead and Cobb. It's an odd gerrymandered district that was originally a Democratic state Senate seat. They pulled it into Buckhead to try to give a Republican a chance to win, and the Republicans did. And now you've got the incumbent, Hunter Hill, being opposed by Jaha Howard. Jaha.
That's right. He's the Democrat.
Can a Jaha win in Georgia?
No, in fact, that's my state Senate district. It's part of Sandy Springs, and it goes into
Well,
Cobb
then that
County.
is a gerrymander, then, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
If it's Sandy Springs and
Well,
Cobb.
in fact, the reason Hunter Hill won was my section of Sandy Springs pulled him through. But
Well, there you
and
have
I'm
it.
hoping that our
Exactly.
section of Sandy Springs will pull him through. He's
Talk
a
about
fine.
rigged
He
elections.
is a fine. Jeff says it's rigged.
Yeah, that's
But,
how you
He's a
make
West
an
Point.
election.
He's
The
a West Point
Democrats
grad.
did this for 100 years or something. But anyhow.
Yeah, right. Now
but-
they're Republicans.
But there's another competitive race too. Keep an eye on election night for down in Henry County and McDonough, and I think that Brian Strickland, the incumbent, will win, but he's got a strong Democrat challenge. And then, of course, in your neck of the woods, you've got I think the state's most competitive race.
It is, and ironically, it's where I live. It's my state representative, and you went to the debate and I didn't. But I heard from my sources that the debate at Oglethorpe University between the challenger Megan Hansen, our former colleague here, and the incumbent Taylor Bennett, who's an accidental Democrat, running for a full term. It only lasted 30 minutes? How can you talk issues in 30 minutes like we do?
It did.
We're fast.
It did, and I did have to laugh. It was, of course, hosted by the Brookhaven Post and Oglethorpe University, and at the very end, the university president...
First of all, they let that guy, Larry Schultz, the president of Oglethorpe, moderate a political debate. That guy opposed the city of Brookhaven. He is a dangerous man.
Oh, dear.
Well,
He went and testified against the city. He shouldn't moderate anything in Brookhaven. And apparently did a terrible job and cut it short after 30 minutes.
Well, it was too
so
short.
So say you.
It was too short. And what was kind of funny to me is the president turned to the university political science professor, and the audience said, "Now, do you have a question?" And he just kind of goes, "No." In which any one of us could have asked a very interesting question of either of the candidates. Now, I'm trying to be very objective, but I think Megan Hansen did a very good job and won on points. I will say this to the Democrat Taylor Bennett: he's very slick. He's very, very left-wing, I think, for that district.
Oh, he's way left.
Yeah,
But
I think a moderate Democrat would be a lot better, but he's not a moderate Democrat.
Well, but he couches it in moderate terms, and I can tell you the state Democratic Party is pouring the money into that race.
Well,
for him.
and also the union bosses, because the
Aren't they the
Amendment
same?
1 is big issue. Megan Hansen is voting yes, and Taylor Bennett is voting no. So that'll be a barometer, Alexis,
Yes,
to
it
see
will.
what happens.
Taylor Bennett is the Democrats' rising white star of the future. You know, he's the former Georgia Tech quarterback.
I would say there's an even better one, and I would think you might agree, and that is I've always watched and I've always appreciated Stacey Evans of Smyrna. She is a more pro-business, moderate Democrat, and she's a female, and I would say watch out for her.
All right, we have to get out. We didn't get our polling data as we thought we might, but we do know from, if you take an average of polls, Hillary Clinton's campaign is gaining in Georgia.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is narrowly in the lead in the state. One of my polling sources says he'll win it, but it's going to be close.
I would look for the Fox 5 poll that we're going to have this weekend, because I think, let's go back several cycles. The undecideds in Georgia have basically broken at the end for the Republicans, and that's what Republican strategists are doing.
Around. Four out of 10. 4 out of 10 are supporting Trump, and that's just not enough for the undecideds to break in his favor, or for those third-party candidates to break in his favor. And I think that there's going to be some fall off there. I'm not so sure that Johnson's going to get 9%, but we do have a poll. The AJC poll shows that this is a deadlocked race, 44-42. It is within the margin of error, and there's huge.
The AJC polls have always slanted toward the Democrats.
And it was taken before the. There's no reason to discredit the poll. It's a good poll. We know that this thing is tight. We know that it's tight in Republican states, in Georgia, in Arizona. They're putting pumping money in Arizona, where both John McCain and Jeff Flake are opposing.
Well, they're not pumping money into Georgia.
They're
not pumping money into here. No, I think let's talk about early voting. And I think you say it's heavy in some black precincts.
Well,
I think it's heavy in a lot of Republican precincts, and this is where the Trump people have a lot of hope, and they're saying, get with their call centers, volunteer, and pump out the vote.
On the first day, there was more than an hour wait in some of the South Fulton precincts.
Trump wins Georgia. Everybody kind of agree narrowly.
I would agree with that.
I'm not sure. Not sure at all. I'm not gonna call it, because it's just too close right now, and we don't know this. The number of minority voters, the people who are going to the polls. We can't tell. And there are a lot of principled Republicans, conservatives, who don't think Donald Trump is one of them.
And there's a lot of Bernie Sanders. There's a lot of Bernie Sanders voters who don't like what Hillary Clinton said.
We got to get out, and Jeff, I'll make your point.
340,000 registered voters have been added to the polls.
Oh yeah, we're so bad at suppressing the
23% of
vote
minority
here.
and 15% white.
You said last week that Republicans were suppressing the vote. Which is it?
All right, we got to get out. We got to get out. And by the way, Jeff, to your
Republicans
point,
Yes.
Trump's deficit is with college-educated white women. That's where he's getting hurt in Georgia.
And Clinton's deficit is with Bernie Sanders supporters that she's been insulting the last week in the
her
emails.
deficit is with white men.
Yep. When we
Like
come back,
you
winners and
and-
losers. Stay with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we'll begin winners and losers with you, Jeffrey.
Well, thank you so much, Dick. I just wanted to congratulate Donald Trump. Again, I made him a winner a couple of weeks ago. I think he deserved that honor, because he was a prominent nominee. He's a prominent nominee. He's the GOP nominee, despite having paid any taxes for 20 years. And I thought that that's quite an accomplishment. And so I want to congratulate him again for rigging this election. He is primarily, almost singly responsible for a 23% jump in minority voter registration in Georgia, 20% among African Americans, 46% among Hispanics. Donald Trump is rigging the election, guys, and that's why I won't call it in Georgia, because we don't know how many people, these people are going to go to the polls to vote against your candidate, Phil.
Go ahead,
what do you
Phil.
think?
I think it's
so
a
he's
joke.
my winner of the
It's
week
a
for
joke.
rigging the
Go,
election.
Phil, but you got to talk fast.
I think two losers, Robert Creamer and Scott Fomal, because those were Clinton people that were told to incite riots at Trump rallies, and that should be condemned by all of us
Yes.
here. And I got a winner, and that is Shane Kimbrough from Smyrna. He's going up in space to the space
That's
station.
right, Georgia Tech alum.
He's a Georgia Tech alum and an astronaut. He's my winner.
All right, Alexis.
Okay, Billy Aaron is my winner. She celebrated her 80th birthday by donating $1 million to the United Negro College Fund. She had a big party and got people to donate and pay for the party. It was fabulous.
Good for
Also, Ingrid Saunders-Jones received the Lifetime Achievement Award from Women Who Mean Business by the Atlanta Business Chronicle. And Stacy Hill had a Confident Woman Expo at the World Congress Center with great day of opportunity for empowering women.
All right, you've left me no time. I will just do the obligatory here. It's the Falcons versus the sneaky San Diego Chargers. They're a better team than people think. It's 4 o'clock today on Fox, the afternoon game from the Georgia Dome. And we'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang. We've got 2 broadcasts left before the election. Stay with us.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.